So James ate a power bowl, and these are in power bowl bowls because James has been taking my dishes home, and this is how it has to be. So he's having Greek salad as well as the power bowl, some hot chocolate grapes, and he tried one of these, and he agrees that this tastes better than this.
But they're both good.
He likes them both. I think, you know, the fat content on this is really nice. That's attractive. And the fat content on this, that's just 2 tiny pieces, is not attractive at all. So for me, that's the one. We're going to talk about understanding Greek technologies. And I'm going to read a poem. This one is called My Moving Flower Garden, and I wrote it yesterday, May 11th, 2024, when I wrote a whole bunch of sonnets, which don't take long to write once you know how to do them. It feels so summery today. I moved my flower garden out, my garden that came in last fall and out in years before, each May. Each winter's tough on them, no doubt. There's dieback, but these plants aren't small, so they're much more alive than dead. I'm sure they're glad to be outdoors. They started blooming weeks ago. I wish they'd waited then instead of risking losing winter stores, but still, they made it even so. This summer, they'll grow big and tall, and then I'll bring them in fall. So, that's, I'm going to do some other things with them this summer. And hopefully I'll bring them in fall. We'll see how it works out. But I wrote down a note, inverted siphon aqueducts are awesome. The Romans preferred bridges over siphons. The inverted siphon is a closed system, so it's difficult to inspect, and it was a maintenance nightmare for them, so that's why they preferred the bridges for that. But anyway, just leave it, it's fine. I mentioned Nero, how I have a very different view of Romans after watching Stefan Resler talk about them primarily. I mean, it starts with the Greeks, but he's talking about Romans a lot. And I had just thought of them as military people who had the sense to actually keep the Greek teachers around so that they could not only take their land, occupy their land and whatever, and take taxes and all that sort of thing, but benefit by their intellectual achievements, their buildings and whatever, the things that they had actually come up with. So, and James has pointed out, well, they didn't really use a lot of the stuff. The Romans, they liked building things, it seems, more than artwork, or doing artwork or something like that. So,
well, they actually produced some good artwork. A lot of it was actually copies of Greek originals and stuff like that. Many of the, I think, things that we adore as Greek statues were actually just Roman copies. The Romans actually, I think, went beyond the Greeks to a certain extent. The Greeks, oftentimes when we look at their classical stuff, there'll be amazing work on musculature and stuff like that, but look at the face, it's kind of idealized. Okay. Look at some of the Roman stuff, and you know exactly what Bozo looked like. Huh?
Or the Greek, you mean?
Roman stuff. See, the Romans came after,
okay,
and they were more, from what I can tell, realistic.
Okay.
So they'd show old people as old people, whatever. The Greeks, when they were doing this stuff, it was hundreds of years before. They were just showing idealized facial features.
Okay.
Now, I think in the Hellenistic era already, which is like 300 years, starting 300 years before the Roman classical era, or imperial era, maybe is the best way to designate it, around the time of Jesus, they were starting to get things more and more personalized. So you get the impression then that that's how a person looked. So you look at pictures of Alexander the Great, you know, he looks a bit like Jim Morrison of the Doors. Jim Morrison styled himself on the look of Alexander the Great. Even to the point that Alexander the Great liked having his head kind of like entwined. You'll see it. And the hairstyle too. Jim Morrison apparently would do it by hand, right?
Okay.
He fashioned.
So
hairstyle.
yeah, I was talking about how Stefan Resler talks about Nero, and this was long before the aqueduct stuff, whatever. But he was talking about Nero and how, like, we know that Nero fiddled while Rome burned, and
Or so the story goes.
and the story goes, like James mentioned to me, and Stefan Resler said it too, that there's rumors that Nero actually started the fire. So
I'm pretty sure.
and yeah, he probably did. Because what he did is he opened up, like Stefan Resler said, well, you know, one thing to be said for him, he opened up his gardens for the refugees to come in. And when the city had been very poorly built, and so
It had been built hodgepodge, like
Yeah.
bit by bit by bit.
and
there
so
was no overall
when
plan.
he redid it, it functioned well. You know, he rebuilt it so that it was a far better city. So
Well, it probably looked better. One has to be careful about things that look monumental. Hitler had this idea that he was going to remodel the interior of Berlin, and probably had plans for Brazil,
yeah, who knows?
the whole world.
The whole world.
But you know, like it involved like a huge big building. I don't think it'd be good for traffic. So there's no guarantee. Just from what I know about it, that it was more Rome after Nero was more functional. Okay? There's a difference between functional and monumental.
So James is going to talk more about this stuff because he knows a lot more than I do. I mean, the instructor knows a lot, and I would highly recommend this course. This is what I have been looking for to teach me about engineering of systems like this, and I didn't realize this was what I was looking for, but this is awesome. I want to watch this course over and over and over. I want to set up my own models and try to get them working like he has. This is awesome. Every school should be teaching this, at least in high school, to students. All students should be going through this and learning this stuff. Our society will be better off if they actually start teaching our students. Teaching them.
Yeah, instead of just kind of leaving them to, they'll discover. Yeah, sure.
Anyway.
You know, the thing to do is to teach people, to give them a basis from which they can make discoveries, further discoveries.
You know, and
If they
that's
don't
what
know,
the
they'll
Greeks,
just end
the
up
Greeks, they have
reinventing
the
the wheel
scholars
all over
teaching
again.
the Romans, and then the Romans, they took things further. You know, they had this knowledge and they made advancements from there. So that's awesome. It's not great that the Romans took over the Greeks, whatever, but
Or anyone else.
but at least we can say, looking back, at least they didn't get rid of the Greek scholars.
So when you look at what came afterwards,
like
the
we were talking
Arab
about
Empire,
communism and stuff like that, and communism, a lot of the time they would wipe out the scholars, and doctors and stuff like that. Well, if you do that, your society isn't going to be progressive. It's going to be regressive. You're not going to be a leading power.
They had this brilliant idea that they were going to let working class people do that, you know, like become the scholars. You know, you just don't become like something like that
you
overnight.
have to actually be taught. You have to learn this stuff. So,
and it usually involves the most important thing is you got to have that value. You got to value it.
yeah.
You know, so they created intergenerational trauma in the sense that they gave education to people who didn't really value it and hadn't valued it for generations. They had never valued it. When I say for generations, it's going back to the beginning of time. So what happens? Well, your society kind of molders. And that's the same thing happened, similar thing happened with Islam. That's under the Arabs and then the Turks who took over the little enterprise to conquer the whole world.
One more thing I'll point out before I put you over to James for the remainder of this show is when I asked James to put these in order of which he liked. He liked both of these products, but he preferred this one. And he preferred my beet balls, which have 0 fat, to these even.
Yeah,
So if you look back in my videos, I teach you how to make beet balls, and you can make them for your family.
very healthy.
And they're my own inventions, so don't be thinking you can make it and sell it like this. That's mine. The beet balls are my invention. There's no product out there. There's no recipe that is like them. So
don't steal her idea.
no, you can make them for your family, and I encourage you to do so. But if you want to profit off them, you're gonna
so
get in
borrow
trouble.
the idea, don't steal it.
Yeah.
Okay, so I can.
You can remove your mask and start talking about whatever you want.
Folks.
You have about 20,
Okay,
so enjoy.
maybe I'll get it done this time.
Yeah.
I was talking the last 2 times where I got cut off about spread of civilization. Civilization, actually picking it up isn't a choice. Holding on to it is. Isn't that amazing? Picking up civilization is not a choice. Holding on to it is. Or at least traditionally that's the way it's been. So what do I mean by it not being a choice? Back in ancient times, if you were located in Kazakhstan, you weren't going to be exposed to civilization. You might have some people wandering across here doing some trading, probably more to the south, through Kyrgyzstan. Yeah, there probably were a few trade routes going through there. And, on the southern borders of it. But you're not near where civilization first developed. Civilization kind of spreads. It doesn't spread like wildfire, though. But it spreads in the sense that it goes from one patch to another. So it looks as though the idea of civilization, at least with writing, it looks as though there were some cities that preceded the development of writing, in Jericho, for example, or what was Çatalhöyük? Is that the name? There are a couple of them in Turkey. Preceded by thousands of years, actually. It looks like the development of writing. But Iraq and Egypt, 2 poles of the Fertile Crescent. I think a lot of times they don't consider Egypt as part of their Fertile Crescent. I'm not sure why. There's a little gap there, and it isn't fertile at all. It's the Sinai Peninsula, but that's easily surmounted. You don't have to mount anything. When they put in the Suez Canal, it's as flat as a pancake. I don't think they had to put any locks in there. They just had to dig a big ditch. That was quite recently, just before my granddad was born, I think. He was born about 1882. Now, whereas when they, in 1914 or whenever it was, when they went across something smaller, I think, the Isthmus of Panama, they had to really put in a pretty sophisticated system of locks. So you've got this Fertile Crescent and stuff. The idea of civilization, at least with writing and stuff like that, trade, spread along the Fertile Crescent between Egypt and Iraq. So 2 of the areas that, or cultures that picked it up fairly early were culture in present-day Lebanon, the Phoenicians, culture in present-day so-called Palestine. It's really Israel, almost all of it except for the Gaza Strip. That's Philistines. That's Palestine. It's the Gaza Strip, and a little bit more. Tel Mikne Ekron was one of the 5 cities of Pentapolis of the Philistines, and I think, and that's in Israel right now. And Gath, or Gat, however you want to mispronounce it, was another one. Those were the 2 ones that weren't on the coast. The other 3, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and Gaza's still there, were on the coast. And those didn't end up in Israel. All those 5 cities should be part of the Gaza Strip, and no more. All of the West Bank should be part of Israel, and a substantial part of the Golan Heights should be. The northern boundaries of Israel are probably okay, based on where the Jews, and before them, the Jews and the so-called Israelites were located. I don't know what the politically correct term now nowadays is for the Israelites. The thing is, people are saying they were ethnically cleansed by the Assyrians about 720 BC. For the 10 lost kingdoms, it was maybe more like 8.5. But the big trouble is there were people called Levites. There's one tribe that had cities scattered throughout Israel, not Judah, or not only Judah, Israel. And they came down to Judah. You know what I'm saying? Many of them, I don't know, but they have a claim on the traditional land of Israel. You might not like to hear it. Hopefully, everyone listening here actually likes hearing, hey, the Jews actually have a homeland based on historical documents that aren't in the Bible. They're backed up by stuff in the Bible, but these are Assyrian documents. Some, well, more like monuments, and at least one Egyptian document. But there are some people out there, many, way too many, that don't want to hear that. They want to go around maintaining that Jews are Europeans. Europeans have had a definitive say about that between, let's say, 1942 and 1945. And it wasn't just the Germans. There were people cooperating in the Holocaust in France and Poland. They made a definitive statement about how European Jews were, i.e., not at all. And but anyway, spread of civilization. So somehow or another, it seemed to have jumped. I don't think the writing system necessarily jumped from Aramaic, which is written this way, to pre-Sanskrit script or something like that, which is written this way. Isn't that amazing? More like the Greek script was written. Greek script originally was written boustrophodon, I believe, which was the way a boo or a cow plows. Cow rocks or something like that. Back and forth, so they'd write like that. But eventually the Greeks wrote the way that we do in English, and the Latins followed, the Romans followed. So it's spread here, and of course they had a writing system that preceded the Devanagari, the script that's used for writing. Sanskrit is still used for writing. Nepalese, Marathi, is that what it's called? The language spoken around Bombay or Mumbai, and in Hindi uses that script, Devanagari. So they developed their own Indus Valley script here. The dating system on that is very shaky because it's based on the archaeology of Egypt, which is off by 800 or so years, 900, almost 1,000 years, based on the work of a racist called Flinders Petrie. He got the title Sir Flinders Petrie, but that's a sign of respect that is given by the government of England. Originally it would be given by the king or queen of England. It's a person's got to earn respect. I'm not just going to accord it because some idiot thinks that Flinders Petrie deserves the title Sir, which basically just means senior. Senior Flinders Petrie. So we're going racist, and he misstated the early part of Egyptian archaeology, basically. And the results spill over into the archaeology of Iraq, everything in between, and spills over into all the way into Greece, and through Turkey, and spills over into Pakistan. That'd be the early archaeology of Pakistan.
You can sit and talk, and I can point to things.
Okay.
If you want.
Well, you can. Anyway, civilization spread, somehow or another. It developed pretty independently in China. It also developed in the New World, in Mexico. Probably more amongst the Olmecs, in between the Yucatan and the main part of Mexico. But they got flooded out by, I wonder what happened. Yeah, it was some sort of a meteor, part of a comet, hit on in the Gulf of Mexico, caused a big flood up the Mississippi, and caused a big flood here. It's about 700 BC, pretty recent. Fun times, eh? So this is amazing that they were able to develop in Mexico their own civilization independently of them, from what I can tell, down in Peru and neighboring areas. The Incas developed their own system, and it wasn't civilization. I guess was kind of like a choice there, but it was more like where people were able to practice agriculture fairly easily, and there'd be some sort of trade and stuff like that, at least internal. Here it was much easier to develop Fertile Crescent, especially when it started to spread through the Hittites about 1000 BC. That's on a sensible dating system, not the silly thing that's based on the Egyptian dating system right now. About 1000 BC, probably earlier for the Phoenicians, and way earlier for the folks in Israel. The folks in Israel, I suspect, started with Moses. He was, according to the account, Egyptian prince, and wake up and smell the coffee. His name was probably Messe, which means sun. I don't know what it was combined with, because it usually combined with a god name. It could have been Im Messe. The Im is the actual Hebrew, original Hebrew designation of Elohim. Im, I am. He was worshipped in Iraq and stuff. He's a storm god. Now, you'll also find that I've been reading the Bible in the original Hebrew, and I look at the vocalization for Jehovah or Yahweh. It should be Yevah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's E-A. And in Sumerian, from what I can grasp, you drop the H's off. So you got Va. And as I recall, you drop the Y's off. And you drop the W's off. In which case you got A in Sumerian means house. A means of the deep or the abyss or the ocean. He's one of the big gods. That's who Yahweh is. He's actually a Sumerian deity. Im is a Semitic deity. He was worshipped by the Assyrians and I believe also the Babylonians in present-day Iraq, but also in Syria. They generally call him a Syrian god. So his real name is Im. Elu just means God. The god Im. I'm the person who's discovered that. Don't steal the ideas either. Now, so it spread. It spread contiguously. So then it spread to Greeks in the western part of Turkey. They were around during the Hittite Empire, and then it spread to Greece. We tend to think of Grecian colonization going into Turkey. No. From what I can tell, Greek civilization, and maybe the Greeks themselves, came from Turkey into Greece. The idea of civilization definitely headed that way. And then later on, Pauline was talking about the Romans taking over Greece and stuff like that. It took them a long time to civilize themselves. It wasn't until the Renaissance, maybe about 1400 AD, that they started to have a democracy, more like a republic, but I think it was a democracy in Florence. Greece had something like that, maybe 500 BC, like almost 2,000 years before. But civilization, then the Romans spread it all around here. Right, it was already in Egypt, but all around here. The Phoenicians had come to here. We call them the Carthaginians. The Romans called them Punic, which is their mispronunciation of Phoenician. Phoenician is just the Greek mispronunciation of Phoenician. The Egyptians called them Fenku, something like that. Of course, the dating system is wrong, so that's supposed to be around 1500 BC. No, it's about 1000 BC when the Egyptians are messing around with the Fenku in their swamps. I think it's translated. So they spread it to Spain and Portugal, Morocco, Algeria, at least in the northern parts of northern Africa and stuff like that. But it stopped there. They had something called a limes or limes. It's probably related to the word limit. They weren't able to civilize the German tribes. And they had a little trouble with the Celtic people, at least the Scottish people, and Ireland. They had to have some walls up in Scotland. There were two different walls, systems of walls. Antonine is one, and I think the wall of Hadrian is another, but I could be wrong about that. Anyway, spread, and then so it's not so much of a choice. there was something like a choice, maybe here, and maybe in China, but eventually even in China it spread through Korea civilization into Japan. China, they definitely have got something like a civilization going 1100 BC, but it takes 1600 years for that idea to make it in Japan, at least having a writing system. Is Japan's writing system. They say it didn't start until 500 AD. It's basically originally was the Chinese writing system. Same thing with the Korean system, same thing with the Vietnamese writing system. Fascinating. I've actually got a book in classical Vietnamese, and every symbol in it is Chinese. Wow. And it's derived from the Chinese. So the big trouble is, like, what happened here? Egypt has this huge big head start. I'm going to show you what happened. So this is not a timeline, this is a literacy line. Here, I'm going to do Scandinavia. Scandinavia got civilized about 1000 AD. And, unlike the United States, I don't know what the literacy rate might be, 97, 98, something like that. Canada might be 99, might be 98, something like that. It's pretty well 100% in Scandinavia. Okay, so you're starting from 0%, you make it up to 100%. They did it in 1,000 years. 1,000 years. Whereas in Egypt, one of the two places that developed writing first, the last stats that I've got are a little bit out of date, about 20 years out of date, 2004. And it was, I believe, 72%. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's up to 75%. It actually might have gone down. It's hard to say. Might have gone up significantly. I can't see it budging much. 75%. So, but the big trouble is, this dates back to, they say, 3000 BC. It might be a little less, but we're going to go with 3000 BC. Uh-oh. They've only run, this is like a race. Let's say this is a 100-mile race. Here, it's like the Scandinavians are like runners that have run 100 miles, 100 kilometers, let's say, 100-kilometer race. You can do that in one day. Okay? Each one of these, I'm saying 1,000 years is the equivalent of one day. I'm almost sounding like the Bible. And so for ancient Egyptian, it's 5 days. 5,000 years. Scandinavians gone 100% in 1,000 years. People in Egypt, and it's because a particular brutal and ignorant religion stomped them about before 650 BC. They've only gone 75% of the way. 75% of the way. So how fast are they going by comparison with the Scandinavians? If they're going the equivalent of 100 kilometers per day, not hour, then the folks in Egypt have been going 15 kilometers a day. Oh, that is off almost by an order of magnitude. The Scandinavians have been going almost 7 times the rate. Okay, 6 and change. I'm going to say